After she watched a few disturbing videos of some shockingly well-fed, starving people celebrating the beginning of the next phase of their endless cycle of violence, Patricia Heaton, who played Deborah in Everybody Loves Raymond, asked, "Can an entire country be filled with psychopaths?" In theory, yes. One way to fill an entire country with psychopaths would be to gather up all the psychopaths in the world and put them in their own country, preferably somewhere in Antarctica, where the coldness of the environment would complement the coldness of their hearts. Just make sure you figure out a way to protect all the penguins. Since there's a genetic component to antisocial personality disorder, that's the personality disorder psychopaths have, you could also breed psychopaths like dogs. If you carried on this project for a few generations, you could end up with an entire country filled with psychopaths. But that's not what's actually going on when you see large numbers of people who all exhibit psychopathic behavior. What you're seeing in these groups is something called dissocial psychopathy. Dissocial psychopaths are people who exhibit the outward behaviors associated with antisocial personality disorder, but may not actually have antisocial personality disorder, depending on how you're interpreting the criteria. Dissocial psychopaths have learned to behave like psychopaths by being part of a culture or subculture that encourages and rewards psychopathic behaviors. Think about someone who doesn't have antisocial personality disorder. He's not a psychopath, but he joins a gang or the mafia or a terrorist group where the behaviors that are associated with antisocial personality disorder are adaptive. They help you function in that group. Behaviors like refusing to obey laws and norms, lying and manipulation, aggression, and so on, are normally frowned upon or punished in society. But if these behaviors are instead encouraged and rewarded in a group, members of the group will start acting like someone with antisocial personality disorder because that's how you're supposed to act in that group. This might be easier to understand with an example from a movie. Consider Jacob Harlan from the film Shot Caller. Yes, it's the guy from Game of Thrones. Jacob Harlan was a stockbroker living in California with his wife and his young son. Super nice guy, loved by everyone, family man. But one night, while driving home with his wife and another couple after having dinner, Jacob crashes into another car and someone dies. Jacob had some wine with dinner and he blows a .10 in the breathalyzer, so they charge him with driving under the influence and vehicular manslaughter. He takes a plea deal for 16 months in prison, but since he has a manslaughter charge, he gets sent to big boy prison. In the dorm on his first night in prison, he sees what happens to someone who isn't protected by a gang. He realizes he has to join a gang for protection, so he joins the Aryan Brotherhood. But you have to work in the Brotherhood. They start making him smuggle drugs to different parts of the prison. He eventually has to start killing people, and he doesn't have much of a choice because if he doesn't do what he's told, they'll kill him too. Jacob gets caught on camera stabbing another inmate in a race war, so his 16 months turns into 7 years. By the time he gets out, he's already abandoned his family. He gets locked back up for gun trafficking for the Brotherhood, and this time he gets life in prison. When the leader of the Brotherhood threatens to kill Jacob's family for messing up the gun deal, Jacob brutally murders the leader of the gang using a weapon he had smuggled in up his butt. Then he takes over the entire gang. So, by the end of the film, Jacob Harlan has murdered multiple people, he's serving life in prison, he's covered in white supremacist tattoos, and he's the leader of a violent gang. He would seem like someone with antisocial personality disorder. If you observed his behavior, you would think he's a psychopath. But there would be two problems if you wanted to label him a psychopath. First, one of the criteria of antisocial personality disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, is displaying conduct disorder earlier in life. And Jacob didn't. He didn't have serious behavioral problems until they were adaptive because he joined a gang. Second, and I'll say this in technical terms and then explain it, one of the requirements for a personality disorder diagnosis in the DSM is that the impairments in a person's functioning shouldn't be better understood as normative for the person's sociocultural environment. In other words, if the behaviors that are associated with a personality disorder are just normal in a particular culture, it's difficult to say that a person who exhibits those behaviors is doing it because of a personality disorder and not because those behaviors are normal in that culture. If everyone in a culture is taught to behave like a psychopath, how would you spot an actual psychopath? If everyone in a culture is taught to behave like a narcissist, how would you spot an actual narcissist? So, Jacob Harlan would have the same behaviors as a psychopath, but he wouldn't meet the criteria for a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. Putting all of this together, while it is possible, in theory, to have an entire country filled with actual psychopaths, people who have antisocial personality disorder, it would be much easier to get a country filled with dissocial psychopaths, people who don't have antisocial personality disorder, but who have been conditioned by their culture or subculture to behave like psychopaths. Can you think of any cultures like that? Hope this helps, and for the sake of full disclosure before a bunch of you blurt it out in the comments, yes, I've been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. But I'm here to help, and sometimes it's good to have a psycho on your side.